She said, "Ugh, stop being dramatic. It's just a guy friend. I can hang out with whoever I want." I said, "Absolutely." What she didn't expect was to see that same friend reading my statement as a witness against her in court the following week. I, 34 male, work as a quality control inspector at a pharmaceutical distribution center. Not glamorous, but it pays well, and I'm good at spotting irregularities. Guess that skill came in handy in my personal life too. My girlfriend Veronica, 31, and I had been together for 3 years. She worked as an inventory manager at a medical supply company. We'd been living together for about 18 months in my townhouse. Things were decent, or so I thought. About 4 months ago, she started hanging out with this guy, Garrett. Said they met at some supply chain conference. Suddenly it was, Garrett thinks this and Garrett says that, every other conversation. They'd grab drinks after work twice a week, coffee on weekends, always texting. "Who's this Garrett guy?" I asked one evening while she was giggling at her phone. "Just a friend from work stuff. He's in logistics." "Seems like you hang out a lot." She looked up, annoyed. "Ugh, stop being dramatic. It's just a guy friend. I can hang out with whoever I want." "Absolutely," I said, and I meant it. She was right. She could hang out with whoever she wanted. But here's the thing about being a quality control inspector. You notice patterns, inconsistencies, things that don't add up. Like how she'd come home from drinks with Garrett smelling like cigarettes, but Garrett supposedly didn't smoke. Or how she suddenly had extra cash for shopping sprees despite complaining about her salary. Or how she'd mentioned specific medical supplies at dinner, asking casual questions about regulations and tracking systems, stuff that had nothing to do with her actual job. Update 1. 2 months ago, I was doing what I always do, paying attention to details. Veronica left her work laptop open on the kitchen counter while she showered. Normally I wouldn't snoop, but a notification popped up from Garrett. Another 50 units ready for pickup. Same arrangement? 50 units of what? I didn't touch the laptop, but I started paying closer attention. Over the next few weeks, I noticed things. Veronica would occasionally bring home boxes that she'd store in our garage, claiming they were samples for a work presentation. They'd disappear after a day or two. She started taking calls in her car. Her drinks with Garrett now included stops at storage facilities. Then came the breakthrough. I was cleaning the garage and found a shipping label that had fallen behind some boxes. It was for medical-grade opioid patches. The sender? Veronica's company. The recipient? Some random residential address. My girlfriend was stealing medical supplies with her just a friend Garrett. I could have confronted her, could have called the cops immediately. But I needed more proof, and honestly, I wanted to know how deep this went. So I installed a dash cam in my car and let her borrow it for her next drinks with Garrett. Told her my car got better mileage for her trip across town. She didn't suspect anything. The footage was damning. They stopped at her company's warehouse, loaded boxes into my car, drove to a storage unit, and met with 2 other people who paid them in cash. The audio wasn't clear, but the video showed everything. Update 2. I sat on this information for 3 days, figuring out my next move. Then I did something that might seem crazy. I reached out to Garrett, found him on LinkedIn, sent a professional message, need to discuss a mutual concern regarding medical supply regulations. Coffee? He responded within an hour. We met at a diner the next morning. Garrett walked in looking nervous. Good-looking guy, I'll admit. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of guy who probably usually got whatever he wanted. "You're Veronica's boyfriend," he said, sitting down. "Yeah, and you're her business partner." His face went white. "I don't know what you're—" "Cut the crap, Garrett. I know about the medical supplies, the storage unit, the cash sales." He started to stand up. I pulled out my phone, showed him a still from the dashcam footage. "Sit down." He sat. "Here's what I know," I continued. "You and Veronica are stealing controlled medical supplies and selling them. That's federal trafficking charges, 10 to 20 years minimum. What do you want?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Information. How long has this been going on?" Garrett cracked like an egg. Told me everything. They'd been doing this for 6 months. Started small, expired supplies that were supposed to be destroyed, then graduated to current inventory. Veronica had used her position to manipulate the system, making it look like products were damaged or expired when they weren't. Garrett handled the buyers through contacts from his previous job. She said you were just some boring boyfriend who never paid attention to anything, he admitted. Said you were too focused on your own job to notice. That stung, not gonna lie. How much money are we talking about? About 80 grand total. She keeps 60%. And where does she keep her share? Cash. She has it in a safety deposit box. Shows me the receipts every week. I leaned back. Garrett, you're in deep trouble, but you're about to get a lifeline. Update 3. I laid it out for Garrett. He could cooperate with me, help me document everything, and I'd make sure the authorities knew he was instrumental in uncovering the operation. Or I could turn over what I had now and let him sink with Veronica. She'll destroy me, he said. She's already destroyed you, you just don't know it yet. When this comes out, and it will, who do you think she'll blame? The male friend who pressured her into it, who manipulated her. I could see him processing this. Garrett wasn't stupid, just greedy and weak. What do you need me to do? Keep detailed records of everything, every transaction, every conversation, screenshot all texts, record your calls if legal, and in 1 week, you're going to report this to the authorities. You discovered irregularities, investigated on your own, and uncovered the whole operation. What about you? I'm just a concerned citizen who noticed suspicious activity and reported it to the proper channels. He agreed. Even seemed relieved, honestly. We shook hands and I left. That night, Veronica came home late from drinks with Garrett. How was your night? I asked. Fine. Just work stuff. Boring logistics talk you wouldn't understand. Probably not, I agreed. She kissed my cheek, reeking of cigarettes and lies, and went to bed. Update 4. The next week was surreal. Veronica lived her life like nothing was wrong, made plans for vacation, talked about us maybe getting a bigger place, all while stealing medical supplies meant for actual patients. Meanwhile, Garrett was documenting everything. He was terrified but thorough. Sent me updates daily. The scope was bigger than I'd thought. They had a whole network of buyers, some reselling to elderly people who couldn't afford prescriptions. It was disgusting. On day 6, I made my move, called the FDA's Office of Criminal Investigations, reported suspicious activity at Veronica's company, gave them enough details to take it seriously, but said I wanted to remain anonymous. Garrett made his report the next day, walking into the FBI field office with a box of evidence and a lawyer. He presented himself as a whistleblower who discovered the scheme and gathered evidence before coming forward. The investigation moved fast. Federal agents showed up at Veronica's work that afternoon. They also raided the storage unit and found approximately $200,000 worth of medical supplies. Veronica called me, hysterical. The FBI is at my work. They're saying something about stolen supplies. I don't understand what's happening. Oh my God, are you okay? Do you need a lawyer? I don't know. I didn't do anything. This has to be a mistake. She came home that night a mess. The agents had questioned her for hours. They'd seized her work computer, her phone, everything. They kept asking about Garrett, she said, pacing our living room. Like we were involved in something together. It's insane. That is insane, I agreed. Garrett seems like such a nice guy. He is. He would never. This is crazy. The next morning, she got a call from her lawyer. Garrett had turned state's evidence. He'd provided receipts, recordings, everything, including recordings of her explicitly planning the thefts, discussing prices, even joking about how I was too dumb to notice her extra cash. She hung up the phone and looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Garrett saying I masterminded everything, that I forced him into it. What? That's horrible. Why would he lie like that? She studied my face for a long moment. I kept my expression concerned, confused. I need to call my lawyer back, she said quietly. Update 5. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for the following week. Veronica was charged with theft of government property, trafficking in stolen medical supplies, conspiracy, and about 6 other federal charges. She'd stopped talking to me completely by then, moving in with her sister. But I was subpoenaed as a witness. The prosecution wanted me to testify about the boxes in our garage, her unusual schedule, any suspicious activity I'd witnessed. I walked into that courtroom in my best suit. Veronica was at the defendant's table, looking pale and small. She glared at me as I passed. Then Garrett walked in. The look on her face when she saw him was something I'll never forget. Pure shock, then rage, then something like defeat. The prosecutor called Garrett to the stand first, and that's when it happened. "Mr. Garrett, you've prepared a statement about your involvement with the defendant?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Please read it for the court." Garrett unfolded a paper and began. "I met Veronica Reeves 4 months ago at a professional conference. She initially presented herself as someone interested in supply chain optimization. However, she quickly revealed her true intentions. He was reading my words. Well, mostly my words. I'd helped him draft that statement during our second meeting after he'd agreed to cooperate. Every detail, designed to establish him as a reluctant participant who'd been manipulated and who'd come forward as soon as he'd realized the full scope of the criminal enterprise. Veronica's lawyer objected multiple times, but the damage was done. Garrett had receipts, recordings, text messages where Veronica explicitly outlined the scheme. Then it was my turn. "Mr. Davidson, how would you describe your relationship with the defendant?" "We'd been together 3 years, lived together for 18 months. Did you notice any unusual behavior?" "In hindsight, yes. She'd become secretive. Extra cash she couldn't explain. Boxes in our garage that would disappear. And she spent an unusual amount of time with Mr. Garrett." "Did you suspect an affair?" "Initially, yes. She told me he was just a friend and I was being dramatic. Said she could hang out with whoever she wanted." "What changed your mind?" "When federal agents showed up at her work. That's when I realized their relationship was professional, criminal, apparently." Veronica's lawyer tried to paint me as a jealous boyfriend seeking revenge. But I had my dashcam footage, which I'd discovered after the arrest and immediately turned over to authorities. I had photos of the boxes in our garage. I had documentation of her unexplained shopping sprees. Final update. Veronica took a plea deal. 4 years federal prison, 3 years probation, $150,000 in restitution. She had to forfeit the cash from her safety deposit box. Turned out to be almost $50,000. Garrett got 18 months in probation for his cooperation. He actually sent me a thank you letter from minimum security. Said I saved him from himself. I didn't respond. The real kicker came during asset forfeiture proceedings. Veronica had bought jewelry, designer bags, electronics with her illegal proceeds, all seized. Her car, which she'd paid cash for, gone. The lawyer fees ate up her savings and her parents had to take out a second mortgage to help her. Her sister reached out last month, said Veronica wanted to talk to me, that she'd figured out I'd orchestrated everything, that I'd turned Garrett against her. "She's not wrong," I told her sister, "but she's also not innocent. You destroyed her life over jealousy." "No, she destroyed her life over greed. I just made sure she couldn't destroy anyone else's. The truth is, I could have just called the cops when I first found out. But then Garrett would have claimed ignorance, maybe walked away clean. Veronica would have played the victim, maybe gotten a lighter sentence. Instead, I gave them both enough rope. Garrett to hang himself with guilt and fear. Veronica to reveal her true nature, the woman who thought I was too stupid to notice, who was stealing medicine from people who needed it. Do I feel bad? Sometimes. 3 years is a long time to be with someone, even someone who turned out to be a criminal. But then I remember those medical supplies were going to real patients, elderly people who needed pain management, cancer patients. And she was stealing from them for designer handbags. She was right about one thing though, she could hang out with whoever she wanted. And I was absolutely fine with that. What she didn't count on was that her just a friend would choose saving himself over protecting her. Or that her boring, oblivious boyfriend was actually paying attention the whole time. The townhouse is quieter now. I kept the dashcam installed though. You never know when you'll need to document something.